Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is a fascinating day, a fascinating evening, which we are waiting for quite some time. Moms Believe, since its inception in 2017, has a relentless endeavor to improve the quality of life of the special children and parents by offering the most scientifically proven and evidence based therapies, resources, tools, remedies, and skill development program used globally and worldwide, which has made a deep impact, a positive impact in the development of the special children. Today, in pursuit of achieving excellence in our services to special children, we strive to offer the most updated knowledge and the most innovative solutions to empower parents and enable the child's growth and development. And believe me, we have impacted more than thousands and thousands of lives in this process. Today, ladies and gentlemen, all the healthcare professionals who have joined us today in this webinar, a warm welcome from Moms Believe, and also a warm welcome from Indian Academy of Pediatrics, Chhattisgarh branch. And Raipur Academy of Pediatrics also warmly welcomes all the eminent guests. Today, Moms Believe, with the most respected Chhattisgarh Indian Academy of Pediatrics, is arranging this webinar on the most important topic of early child intervention and its impact on autism spectrum disorder. On behalf of Moms Believe, it's a great pleasure for me and a wholehearted gratitude to Dr. Inder Nathani, who is the Honorable President of IAP Chhattisgarh. Let me also introduce Dr. Arun Agarwala, who is the Honorable Secretary of IAP Chhattisgarh branch. A heartfelt thanks and a pleasure to introduce Dr. Rimjim Srivastava ma'am and Dr. Payal Arora ma'am, who are again the President and Secretary of Raipur Academy of Pediatrics. Now let me quickly come to the eminent and the most dignified panelists of today's interactive session. Let me introduce to you one of the most dignified doctors, Dr. Nilay Majorkar, who has been the in charge and the head of the Department of Early Child Intervention in Raipur District Hospital. Welcome to you, sir, Dr. Nilay. We have, along with us, most eminent Dr. Ashish Singh Ajula, sir, one of the most prominent pediatric neurologists with a huge and vast experience in this particular field from Raipur. Welcome to you, sir, as an eminent panelist. We also have with us one of the most eminent, Dr. Pawan Gupta, sir, the senior pediatric neurologist who has from Indore, Madhya Pradesh. A huge, vast experience of international as well as national practice, and his degrees are also specializing in pediatric neurology. Welcome to you, sir. Welcome to this particular webinar. Very sharp and crisp, I would like to hand over the stage to our moderator for the day, Dr. Nilay Majorkar, sir. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think rather it is good evening. Ujla sir को good evening. बाकी लोगों को already कर चुका हूँ, and all the seniors who has joined, all the colleagues who has joined, a warm welcome. अरुण सर को बहुत good evening. अरुण सर दिख नहीं रहे हैं. अरुण सर आ गए हैं क्या?
हाँ हूँ भाई. Good evening.
नथानी सर.
बोलो भाई.
नथानी सर.
नथानी सर लर्न नहीं किए शायद, लगता है अभी वो दूसरा मीटिंग चल रहा ना, उसी में ही होंगे लग रहा है.
अच्छा चलिए ठीक है. So I think with permission from our expert panelist, Dr. Gupta Saab and Dr. Ojla sir, should I start?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Ojla sir. Ojla sir, good evening.
हाँ, good evening, sir.
कैसे हैं?
बस बढ़िया, आप ठीक हैं?
बस बढ़िया बढ़िया. नीले तो पूरा तुम कलरफुल बना दिया है। हाँ नीले,
हाँ जी सर।
एकदम ही कलरफुल बना रखा है यार।
सर ऑटिज्म शुड ऑलवेज बी कलरफुल, अदरवाइज जो है वो जो मैसेज है इट शुड नॉट बी कन्वेड, इट विल नॉट बी कन्वेड।
गुड गुड गुड।
Disorder is colorful with different possibilities and different problems. So the presentation should also be colorful, and our expert panelists are also looking very colorful today,
I think Nathani sir also joined in.
including you,
Good
sir.
evening, Nathani sir.
Good in t-shirt today.
Nathani sir is join कर चुके हैं शायद। Good evening, Nathani sir.
नथानी सर ज्वाइन कर लिया क्या?
वो दिखाया तो था, स्क्रीन पे आया था।
अभी मैंने जूम।
हेलो नीलय।
हाँ सर का आ गया ना वॉइस। गुड इवनिंग सर।
गुड इवनिंग अरुण। गुड इवनिंग नीलय।
सर गुड इवनिंग।
गुड इवनिंग।
We were waiting for you to join. Start
अरे मैं वो भिलाई वाला चल ही रहा था ना यार, उसके कारण चक्कर हो रहा था। वो भिलाई वालों का अभी तक चल रहा है वो वाला।
ओके।
अभी तक खत्म नहीं हुआ। चलो लेट अस स्टार्ट।
Okay sir, so with due permission from your side,
yes start.
We are going to discuss the autism basically, and we are having Dr. Pawan Gupta sir from Indore and Ashish sir from Raipur only, and so without wasting much time we'll start. Basically we all know that autism is made from a Greek word which is autos, which means the self-centered. So my first question to Ojla sir is that why this autism has become so important in these days? Why the discussion has been increasing nowadays about autism?
Well, one of the major reason is autism is a major cause of disability in children. Now we are more aware of autism. The more children are being diagnosed with autism, and the other thing is, if you look at the data worldwide, the number of cases with autism is increasing. The other thing is that in places like Raipur, few years ago, there was hardly any treatment available for autism. But now we have lots of treatment available. We can do lots for autism. So and actually we are now diagnosing more kids. That's why it's very important that autism should be discussed, and we should be more aware about the kids with autism, mainly because the game is that early intervention. So you intervene early, you get a better result. So that's why we are discussing more and more about autism nowadays.
So probably sir, I think we are becoming more developed from the developing, and because of that the infectious diseases are becoming less, except if we keep aside the COVID-19. So now this developmental disorders coming up on the surfaces, and with the urban population now these kind of things are becoming very obvious, and even the doctors are becoming familiar with this autism. If you talk about a common disease like Down syndrome, we read in the textbook that it is 1 in 800. It is, the prevalence is 1 in 800. And if you see autism in the developed world, the prevalence is around, I think, 1 in 60 or 70. So definitely this is the disease we should talk about now. So for Gupta sir, parents usually ask that what is this autism, and what is happening with my child, what is this term autism, ये क्या होता है, आप बताइए, हमें एक्सप्रेस करिए हमारे बच्चे को ये क्या हो गया है. Gupta sir.
Buddha, for inviting me
Gupta
to
sir.
Participate in this nice discussion.
Gupta sir,
yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes. The volume is little low, but
volume is very less, and we can't see you. Your video is
video is gone. Okay. Just a minute.
Yes. Now we can see you.
You can see me now?
Yes, we can see you, sir.
आप थोड़ी कम है
Yes,
आप।
yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, I was just saying thanks to Nilay and Buddha and Chhattisgarh Academy of Pediatrics for inviting.
Sorry, Pawan, you need to speak up a little.
सर आपकी आवाज your volume is low.
No. Just a minute, I'll see if there is any problem
Actually,
with
now
the
it's
volume.
better.
अभी आवाज अच्छी आ रही है सर। Now.
अच्छी है? ठीक है, okay.
Now it's okay.
Okay, so first of all, thanks for inviting me to this discussion today, organized by the Chhattisgarh Academy of Pediatrics. Thank you, Nilay, thank you, Buddha, and all the esteemed members and dignitaries of the Chhattisgarh Academy of Pediatrics. To begin with, this is obviously the first question which anybody would like to know, especially the parents whom we diagnose and tell that your child has autism. So, in simple words, I would like to say that autism is basically a combination of symptoms, and that's why it is called a syndrome or a spectrum. And the main problem which we see as a combination are threefold. So, firstly, there are problems with social interaction as to interaction with the other peer groups. Secondly, the main problem is social communication. So, the use of social skills in communication. And thirdly, is repetitive or stereotyped behavior. So these are the main three pillars. If we find all the three things at the same time, which can explain the symptoms of the child, then we consider giving a diagnosis of autistic spectrum disorder. Now, for parents, it would mean that the child is not speaking or not engaging or doing some unusual behavior. So, it is very important that the difficulties are present in all the three areas, as just the speech delay or just one of the areas doesn't qualify the child to be labeled as autistic spectrum disorder. Now, technically, the classification is called the DSM-5, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of the US classification system, revision 5, which was done in 2013. According to the latest technical definition, you either need to have social interaction or social communication or plus you need to have either restricted or repetitive behavior to qualify for the diagnosis. Now, previously we used to use lot of other terms in association with autism, such as Asperger's syndrome, pervasive developmental disorder, childhood disintegrative disorder. Since 2013 new nomenclature, all these previous terms have now been stopped, and we only use autistic spectrum disorder to highlight the importance of it as a spectrum and broad umbrella term to cover all the presentations. We broadly divided into two groups, high functioning autism and low functioning autism, and the main difference is in the intellect. So if you're in high functioning autism, your intellect is relatively preserved, and it tends to present at a later age, whereas the low functioning autism, your intellect is also involved and generally tends to present at a younger age group, most commonly in the infancy, 1 to 2 year or 3 year age group.
Okay, sir. So I think that for pediatricians, for all the technical terms you have used, for pediatricians it is easy to understand. But our pediatricians usually ask that how will we explain the parents in 2 or 3 lines? Ujjwala sir, you would like to add anything?
So for parents, I would generally say that this is a term to define the symptoms basically. So whatever we are observing, like there is problem with the speech, problem with interaction, and some unusual behavior. So this all clubbed together, we give it a term of autism. So it is just a means of describing all the symptoms in the child. So that's how I try to explain that to the parents.
Okay. Sir, you want to add?
Yeah, actually मैं पेरेंट्स को ये बताता हूँ कि आपका बच्चा एक अपनी ही दुनिया में है, तो जब आप उससे बात कर रहे हैं तो वो जब उसकी इच्छा है तब वो सुनेगा, वो आपसे जब तभी बात करेगा जब उसकी, या आपसे कम्युनिकेट तभी करेगा जब उसकी इच्छा है। उसका जो बिहेवियर है, उसके रिपीटेशन, उसके जो स्टीरियोटिपीज है, वो अपने आप ही करता रहता है। तो वो अपनी दुनिया, उसकी दुनिया हमारी दुनिया से थोड़ी अलग है। तो थोड़ा वो पेरेंट्स को समझाने के लिए दिस इज व्हाट आई यूज।
Okay, sir. So technically, it is the disorder including the verbal communication, non-verbal communication, and most important is the social interaction, which is not
Exactly.
there. So all the three are missing. Probably the software which is autistic child is having is not compatible with the our regular apps in which our brain is working probably. So we go to the next. Again, the parents ask Ojla sir that why my child? Why not the पड़ोसी का, हमारा ही क्यों?
Well, इसमें, why you get autism is, we exactly don't know what causes autism. There is an interplay between genetics and environment, but the problem is genetics is huge. There are hundreds of genes which are involved with autism, and then the environment is also vast, because in India we have lots of cases which comes with birth asphyxia, hypoglycemia in a neonatal period, and then later actually land up with autism. So we exactly don't know which child will have autism, though genetics plays a role. Agar twins hain, then there is around 30 to 70% chance that the other child will have autism. या फिर if you have a sibling, the first child hai, the second child will have around 18% of developing autism. So we exactly don't know why your child got this autism. It is like epilepsy, you got it, but we can't exactly tell you. If we have identified a definitely genetic factor, we can let you know about it. पर किस बच्चे को autism होएगा, we don't know, because Pawan would agree that in UK हम देखते थे कि ऐसे फैमिली जो बहुत पुअर है, सिंगल मदर, लॉट्स ऑफ किड्स, chaotic फैमिली, उनको ज्यादा होता था उनके बच्चों को. But if you look in India, we see parents who are educated, who nuclear family, higher socioeconomic status. So why the change, we don't know exactly कि क्यों है.
Okay, so
बस होना था, हो गया.
But basically it is God's will. So you have to bear with it. One.
Exactly.
And what you have explained is there are three pillars of brain development. One is environment, one is nutrition, and one is the genes. So in all the three, maybe there is a problem in one, or maybe there is a problem in all the three, or maybe in the two, possibly. Okay. So again, the next question of the parents usually is that what is the risk for the next pregnancy? Now this child is I'm having this child, and this child is having features of autism. What about the next pregnancy? Dobara dusra bachcha bhi, will it be like this only? Gupta sir, can you please
Yeah, this is a very common question actually we encounter in the clinic practice. मेरी प्रैक्टिस में मैं बेसिकली दो तरह से आंसर करता हूँ. एक तो मैं पेरेंट्स को जिनको कि नंबर्स में इंटरेस्ट रहता है, उनको मैं थियोरेटिकल जो रिस्क फैक्टर्स हैं नंबर्स में वो एक्सप्लेन करता हूँ, और दूसरा एक प्रैक्टिकल एस्पेक्ट भी बतलाता हूँ. तो अगर हम थियोरेटिकल रिस्क फैक्टर की बात करते हैं कि कितने परसेंटेज चांसेस हैं नेक्स्ट प्रेगनेंसी में वापस बेबी को सेम डिजीज से अफेक्ट होने के लिए, तो इट ऑल डिपेंड्स ऑन फर्स्टली वेदर इट इज अ बॉय और अ गर्ल व्हिच हैज बीन डायग्नोज्ड विद ऑटिज्म. Now, as we all know, the overall prevalence in boys is 4 times more than girls. So, approximately 2% of the population of the boys are affected with autism, and 0.5% of the girl population is affected. So, if you have a girl child who has been diagnosed with autism, the chances of having recurrence is far more, almost 4 times more than what you would expect if it is a boy child for a recurrence risk. And now, if if you think if it is an affected girl, and then you are asking me risk for the boy to be affected, it is almost eightfold increase in the chances of having autism again. So if we take a background risk of 2%, it is almost 16-17% chance. But if it is on the other hand a boy, and if we think that the next sibling is going to be a girl, then it is just a twofold increase. So about 4-5% chances of the baby having it. The difficulty with this equation is it is not very practical, because the parents would not know what are they going to have a boy or a girl next time. You can only know whether the patient sitting in front is a boy or girl. Now the second consideration is they will just ask you, I just want to know so that I can decide whether we should go forward with the pregnancy or not. Now that is a totally different ball game, because these all epidemiological risk factors are different, and if you give any suggestion at individual level, you have to be very practical in that. तो प्रैक्टिकल एडवाइस जब कोई ऐसा पूछता है मेरे से, तो मैं उनको एक ही चीज ये बोलता हूँ कि ये इस पे डिपेंड करता है कि अगर आपका एक बच्चा ऑलरेडी डायग्नोज्ड है, will you be able to manage psychologically and practically another child? Suppose if the other child does turn out to be autism, will it still be okay with you, or you are somebody who would definitely not want another child with autism? तो अगर हम देखें तो मैक्सिमम चांस स्टिल अबाउट 80-85% चांस आर स्टिल दैट यू विल हैव अ नॉर्मल बेबी, but even in the worst case scenario, about 10-15% chance that you might have another child with autism, and nobody will be able to predict that beforehand. So as with everything in life, there is a risk factor, but if you want to take a chance, it is a good calculated risk. 85% is a very good sort of maximum chances that you are going to have a normal baby. But some parents who have a very tormenting experience, or they definitely wouldn't like any risk whatsoever for the child to have autism. In that case, actually, you have to be very honest, and I do tell them that that risk cannot be excluded, because definitely you are at a higher risk than general population of having another child. So that is how I generally tell the parents about this.
Okay, so basically 80 to 85% there are chances they are going to.
So basically, the risk is increased from 4% to 16% based on the scenario. There is a wide range, but we can't say for definite in the individual cases, the individual risk factor for that family. But epidemiologically speaking, depending on whether it is in the girl child or a boy child, and what sibling they are going to have, the risk factor. But on an average, yeah, about sort of broadly speaking, 10-15% in comparison to 2% increased risk.
Okay, sir. So, well, I guess. So it will be now for pediatrician. It will be easy to explain that if somebody asks that what is going to happen in the next pregnancy, they will be able to answer it. Now, so is there any genetic predisposition for autism, Ojla sir? Can we diagnose early? Can we diagnose in utero?
Definitely, there is genetic predisposition, but the problem is there are lots and lots of genes which are involved. And the other thing is, as we discussed, the environmental factor. Because, two child will be carrying the same gene, but one child will have autism, the other child will not have autism. So what has brought it? So we really don't know. So, American Academy of Pediatrics, it recommends that every new child who is diagnosed with autism should have array-CGH, because array-CGH has the maximum chance of getting a diagnosis that what has caused autism. But in real life, you hardly get it. The other thing is there are few genetic conditions like Rett's, like Fragile X. Fragile X has like 1-3% chance of. So autism has, all the kids with autism, around 1-3% will have Fragile X. Like Prader-Willi or Angelman. So they have increased chance of these are the genetic condition where there is increased chance of autism. So it's very difficult to look at the genes, because if say for example, if you send a genetic say whole exome panel for autism, most likely that what you are going to get back is variants of unknown significance. So you will now, it's very difficult to say that this has caused autism.
Okay, sir. Okay,
The
so
other thing is about antenatal diagnosis. Uh, if normally it's very difficult, as Pawan was saying, to diagnose a child, the genetic cause for autism. If the parents insist, I ask them to do array CGH in the kid. And the geneticist also recommend trials. Trials means doing whole exome for kids and parents together to identify. But the real chances that we will be able to, to find out whether what this child has got autism from is very rare. So antenatal diagnosis would be very difficult.
So what I get from your side is that it's still, I think there is a lot of research and lot of other things should go for this genetic predisposition or related to genes related to autism. There should be much research required, and probably in near future probably we'll get a better answer for this question.
And if it's
I
most
would
polygenic, so lots of genes are involved at one time. So it's
uh,
interplay between the genes.
I would like to add something. There is a very relatively newer theoretical concept which has come up about this particular topic. Uh, Overall, if we see in the last 100 years or so, since the beginning of the cognitive testing in the form of IQ test, and later on in terms of developmental tests for children, we have observed that the human cognition has constantly been increasing over the generations. So if we consider, it's almost 3 points every 10 years. So in last 100 years, the IQ level has increased by almost 30 points, and that is the reason that the normative data for the IQ calculation and even for our developmental testing for children have been adjusted repeatedly to account for that overall cognitive development of humankind as a whole. Now, this following this discovery of genes which are linked to the autism, it has been found that the alleles which are mutated in autism also are the alleles which are responsible for higher intelligence in human beings, which is very actually paradoxical if you think that way. So what they are saying is probably autism is basically a mutation of ever evolving human brain in terms of cognitive intelligence, and this is just an aberration because we are always constantly having mutations, and the beneficial mutations are passed on in the generation, leading to the increased cognitive ability over the generations. And sometimes we end up with situation like autism where it is disruptive, and that's why you get this sort of symptoms due to the disorganized brain circuitry because of these mutations. So that is a very interesting concept, and also they are saying that's the reason you are finding more and more autistic child in parents who are actually very good cognitively themselves, like highly skilled or trained parents, or those who have a good cognitive level. You higher socioeconomic groups and all those population also are having high incidence of autism. So, so that is something to keep in mind in terms of genetic evolutionary concept.
Okay. So you have explained it very well, and I think we will also discuss positive sides of autism in next two slides, in which we can discuss much about it, whatever you are saying. Now we come to a case, because simple questions always get to the boring side. So this is a case of 2-year-old Shaurya and complaining about the language delay. The other doctor, the other pediatrician counseled that you come after 6 months. but parental concern was there. Parents were very well educated, and they said कि नहीं हमको तो और हम we will go for doctor shopping and we will go to Ojla sir. So Abhi sir, Gupta sir, now this is for you, that what should we do from here?
Yeah, this is a very common scenario actually, and the most common reason of parents bringing the child to the clinic that my child is not speaking. So obviously ये देखना बहुत जरूरी है, and especially any situation where parents are very concerned, you need to look into it deeply anyway. So I would like to say कि whenever you come across a child who have delay in the speech or the parents are concerned, the first thing you need to focus is the things which should happen before the actual speech development. So just to give a brief overview, the expressive speech, as in the actual words, are the last step in the speech development. So the process before that, what we call receptive language development, pre-verbal communication, are the essential cornerstone, after which only the expressive speech is generally developed. So whenever this scenario comes across, like a 1.5 or 2-year-old is not speaking, you should always look behind. Don't focus there that 2-year is not speaking, so he will speak in some time. No. What you need to see is whether he is doing the things which should be ready before the child is able to speak. So you need to look into his understanding aspect, whether he is able to have a receptive communication, whether he is able to understand the concept of language, whether he has pre-verbal communication. No, those are the things which will guide you. Whether if they are okay or almost for his age, then there is no major reason to worry. You can reassure the parents, and probably the child will start speaking in few months. But the major thing is that the child is not understanding. Suppose at 2 years he is not recognizing any body parts, or he is not pointing to any animal picture in the book when asked. Then basically his receptive language is not even 1 year. So that is a clear indication that this child will have problems, and you need to have a detailed investigation. So normally from 6 months onward, between 6 months and 12 months, I'll just tell you the normal trajectory of things, how it happens, so you'll have a clear idea.
Yes, sir. We'll come to those questions. We'll come.
Okay.
So we'll go slow and we'll come to those questions also. So basically, what message you have given is that this is a matter of concern. We should, definitely take the proper history, go for a hearing test, confirm that the child is having the other parts of other domains of developments are normal or not. If they are normal, then definitely you can wait for some time. If they are not normal, then definitely the child should be referred to a developmental pediatrician or neurologist, right?
Yeah, correct.
So now again, this is now the child is Rinki. She is 1.5-year-old, and she has gone for the vaccination in pediatrician's office, and she was doing the rocking movements and even not responding to the name. So pediatrician was clever enough to see all these things, and she was looking at the wall. There was no cry after vaccination, and the parents are very happy that there is no problem at all. My child is very good child. He doesn't create any problems and sits very quietly and plays well alone. So now from here, how should we go ahead? Ojla sir.
This is quite common actually. Many parents, they don't realize that their kid has problems. क्योंकि the only thing they see is कि अच्छा बोल नहीं रहा है, and what the grandparents would say, नहीं कुछ बच्चे late बोलते हैं. So, but you are seeing that actually the child is not responding to the name. So receptive उसको language भी नहीं है. The child does not cry after vaccination, so emotion भी उसके blunted हैं. Doing rocking movement, so this is a repetitive restricted behavior है इस बच्चे का. So what in this scenario, what we really need is, at the end of the day, the most important thing is how you diagnose a kid with autism is by history. So what we really need to do is take a very, very detailed history. All right. So you need to inquire about the birth history, the family history, what about the previous sibling, any history of autism in the family. And then the motor development of this kid, has it been normal? And then slowly because these parents, they are happy with whatever the child has got. So what you really need to do is you need to start asking the leading questions. All right, so you need to start asking about, at home, does the child respond or not? Because sometimes what happens is the child behaves quite differently when the child is in clinic with you, and the child is completely different at home or at school. So how the child responds at home? What about the play? What the child play with? Is this very restricted? वो कि एक ही चीज से खेलता है? And then how the child behaves with other kids, whether or the sibling. And then what you really need to do is at 1.5 years of age, there are few really cardinal questions you need to ask is whether the child has pretend play या फिर imaginative play है कि नहीं, कि वो किसी और चीज को, for example वो कार को फोन बना लेता है या माउस को कार बना के चलाता है कि नहीं, whether the child points at something when the child needs something, और जब आप किसी चीज को इशारे करते हैं वो बच्चा देखता है कि नहीं. And what I tend to do is in this case, because it's very difficult to explain to parents कि भैया आप vaccination लगाने आए हैं and I'm telling you that your child has a major problem. So what I tend to do is at the end of my discussion I then fill up a form that's MChat. MChat is freely available, English Hindi दोनों में available है. And I fill up the form with MChat, and if the score is more than 3, then I explain it to them that this is a screening question, and see this is what you have scored. तो अगर MChat में बच्चा score कर रहा है, then the child should be then further investigated whether the child has autism or not.
Okay, sir. Okay, so basically what I got from you is that this child is really very passive, and this passivity is really alarming. One, and so basically the absence of the normal behavior is which is what we have to catch, and definitely then we can screen the child with MChat or maybe the other screening test, whatever everybody wants to do, that we'll discuss later on. And then we can confirm that this child is having suspected features or having some kind of problem, and we can act accordingly. Now this is not a very common scenario, but good pediatricians usually catch these kind of patients. This is 6-month-old, came for the flu shot, and the pediatrician noticed that there is infrequent eye contact, and after asking the history, the pediatrician came to know that the baby didn't, develop social smile till now at 6 months of age, and also resist cuddling. He doesn't like to, jhappi. So what is to be done at 6 months of age? Gupta sir, can you please go ahead with this case?
Yeah. So this is what I actually left at the last time. So basically at 6 months, if there is worry that the child is not making eye contact and doesn't have a social smile, it is very worrying to me as a neuropediatrician. The reason being that it highlights the social cognitive development. So the social smile, the eye contact are the means of communicating used by the babies, because they don't have the vocal language at that time. And that is also the means of assessing them in terms of their social cognitive development. So the younger the child, the more difficult is the assessment. So at 6 months, basically, you will have to look into other aspects of his social development, cognitive development. If you recognize this initial signs, because normally you would expect that the social smile should have developed by now. 6 months is a red flag if there is no smile. So other things which needs to be looked if these symptoms are present are in terms of attention and concentration. So joint attention, whether the child is sort of looking at where you are pointing, or if there is you are smiling back, does the child facial expression changes? So the gestures and the non-verbal communication should be there at this age, 6-8 months. So if they are very excited, they will change their expressions to express their amazement at something. Or if the tone of the mother and father, if they speak in a very sort of high tone, the child will get a bit sort of वो उसको लगे मुझे डांट रहे तो वो उसका एक्सप्रेशन अकॉर्डिंगली उसके हिसाब से चेंज होगा। तो ये सब चीजें जो है इनडायरेक्टली आपको बताती है कि बच्चा सोशली कितना अपने एनवायरनमेंट से और अपने केयर टेकर से इंटरेक्ट कर पा रहा है। अगर तो वो आई कांटेक्ट नहीं दे रहा है, इसका मतलब ये है कि ही इज नॉट इंटरेस्टेड इन हिज सराउंडिंग्स बेसिकली एंड ही इज नॉट एंगेजिंग with his environment. So that should immediately raise your antenna because that child needs to be assessed in detail. And the bottom line is अगर आप जल्दी उसको diagnose करके जल्दी pick up करते हैं और जल्दी intervention करते हैं तो there is a very good outcome in this type of situation. And I think we need to spread this word among all our colleagues and the healthcare staff of picking up this soft signs. क्योंकि ये डिफिकल्ट रहता है, दैट्स व्हाई वी जनरली गेट पेरेंट्स एट 1.5 2 years of age बिकॉज ये इनिशियल साइंस जो रहती है ये मिस हो जाती है जनरली। तो अगर इफ देयर इज अ गुड डॉक्टर, गुड हेल्थ केयर पिकिंग अप दिस साइंस, इट विल हेल्प द कॉज ग्रेटली आई थिंक।
So, sir, suppose the doctor has picked up. Now, what is to be done? How we go ahead with this child?
Yeah.
What?
I think if the doctor is not comfortable doing the assessment himself, it is best to refer to a more experienced and senior developmental pediatrician or a neuropediatrician who can do a detailed assessment of this child in terms of his social cognitive development. If he is able to do it himself, well and good. The child will need to be probably observed in terms of his sort of interaction with the caregivers, play activities, and the other milestones which we expect for his age. So a detailed assessment will tell us whether that is definitely something to worry about, or is it something which was just on that occasion and not present on other occasions, because it should be consistent behavior at a different times at different
How
times.
frequently, sir, we should call this child for follow-up in our OPD? If somebody is
I think-
suppose, or whether
I think
the
the
institution is
yeah.
looking.
The initial assessment should be done as soon as possible in this scenario, and then based on that, if you find abnormality or if you are very worried that okay, this child is showing social cognitive development of just 1 month or 2 months and his chronological age is 6 months, then probably he needs to be followed up much more closely, and we need to think about intervening early. But on the other hand, if it's just a borderline case and probably the symptoms which have been noticed are not consistent when you sort of see him on 2-3 different occasions, then the scenario will be different. So it all depends on what the initial assessment shows it, but this child should be having a detailed assessment as soon as possible once you recognize that this is certainly not normal for his age.
Okay, so detailed assessment.
Nilay, also that this child could be just a global developmental delay. It could
Yeah.
be neurometabolic also. So we need
Anything
to
be
think about that also.
Sure.
That's why I'm saying that we need to understand, like we cannot just brush it under the carpet, because this is a very significant thing. If somebody has picked up, it needs to be sort of assessed in depth.
So frequent follow-up first, good keen assessment, and then followed by regular follow-up, maybe
Yeah.
month, maybe 2 months.
Based on the initial assessment, as Ashish has also rightly pointed out, it can be anything. There are many conditions which can lead to this. So based on the initial assessment and investigations, once we have an idea about what we are dealing with, then the further follow-up will depend on that initial assessment. If it is a simple case of a social communicative disorder or social cognitive problem, then probably accordingly we'll arrange for the follow-up. If it is a more of a neurological problem or some metabolic genetic problem, then accordingly we need to investigate and treat.
On it, because we don't have charts or some kind of protocols at 6 months or 1 year usually. So we usually send the child to a developmental pediatrician, and our pediatricians and our other colleagues, they will be interested in knowing that exactly what the developmental pediatrician and neuropediatrician is doing with the patient. So that was the reason behind us.
I see. So what we do is generally we do a overall developmental assessment. So what we look at all the 4 parameters: your gross motor, fine motor, then speech and language, and the play skills. Basically, as we all have learned it during our post-graduation years, and we try to map up the child. Basically, where is he in terms of his gross motor skills? Where is he in terms of his speech? So the expressive speech is not there at this age, but we try to understand the receptive speech. So receptive speech means whether the child is engaging with the mother. So whether it's giving eye. So you look at the attention concentration of the child. So when the mother is calling the name, whether the child is responding, at least looking towards the mother face, giving the eye contact. If the mother is saying, "Look there, look, cat." So whether the child is turning his head and looking in the direction where mother is pointing. So these all things give us an idea whether the child is engaging in terms of his social cognitive development. The other thing will be age appropriate play activities. So whether he is sort of holding things in his hand, transferring from hand to hand, whether he is trying to reach the objects in front of him, uh, and how does he respond when suppose if he starts crying to some reason, whether he can be easily distracted to something else, whether he gets unsettled by other noise, or if you take away toys from him, how does he respond to that. So these are all the techniques which a developmental pediatrician and the neurologist would use in the assessment. I think if I go into further detail, it will be too technical, but I'm just giving you a flavor. That's what we generally do, and based on that, we get a very good idea where the child stands in terms of its developmental age.
So we'll summarize this question, the answer of this question. What are the red flags? We'll summarize whatever we were discussing. Ojla sir, can you please summarize what are the red flags at what age?
Yeah. A red flag for me is when a child enters a room and child is in his own world. वो बच्चा घुसेगा, there's no eye contact, वो ऊपर देख रहा है या दीवार को देख रहा है, usually वो लाइट को देखते रहते हैं, they'll start jumping around idhar udhar. You know, normally what happens is kid is afraid of a doctor. वो डॉक्टर को देखना आ रहा है पर इसको कोई मतलब नहीं. So that is the biggest red flag sign for me, that the child is not responding appropriately. All right. The other red flag sign is a language delay, because usually what happens is this: they come with the speech delay, and the most important is whether there is any regression in the speech. So usually what happens is the kids with autism, they develop, they start speaking few words at around 1 year of age, and then they regress, then they stop speaking, or their language does not progress. The other red flag sign is when the child is not responding. बच्चे को जब आप parents बुला रहे हैं, बच्चा अपने ही धुन में है, he's not responding. Usually we have toys in our room, so the child comes to your room and he either ignores the toys, do something else, or when he's playing with the toys, वो बच्चा टॉयज को लाइन में जमा देगा. So he is not playing normally with the toys. So these are the important red flag sign. The other one is obviously repetitive movements like rocking, the history that the child hurts himself, head banging. And one of the most important is how does the child reacts with other peers. Okay, so not the kids who is elder to them. So if it's the history is that he's not playing with his peers, he tends to just sit alone. That is a red flag sign for me.
Okay, sir. So I think whatever you have said, I will just finish it in 2 lines. That at 6 months, if we see the child is not making, eye contact and social smile. At around 1 year of age, if child is not responding to the name, at 1.5 years, if he's not pointing to the object, and at 2 years, if he's not, making sentence with the 2 words. So at what time, what is happening, and whether it is, fitting with the chronological age, the developmental age is fitting with the chronological age with the extreme limit. So this time we have to, be alert and should, initiate to evaluate the child further. Now, we have already discussed, all these scenarios, and we have discussed what is autism. So everybody is seeing, these kind of children, and there are repetitive movements, there is echolalia, there is shyness, they like the similar routine. We have all discussed all this. So what is the reason behind all these things? in general, in general language, if you want to express it, that what is the reason? Sometimes the parents also ask that what is the reason why that my child is doing like this.
Okay. So, in single line, I would say the reason is because the child is having self-stimulatory behavior. जिसको हम बोलते हैं कि खुद इन सब चीजों से उसको एक तरह का pleasure मिलता है, और medical term में हम बोलते हैं self-stimulating या stimming behavior. So we don't know exactly the underlying cause or reason for definite why the children shows all this stereotypical behavior. There are various hypotheses and theories which try to explain, but this is again an area which we are not sure of in very much detail. Broadly, the stereotypies are divided into two main orders: lower order and higher order. So, lower order includes like flapping, fidgeting, body rocking. All those things comes into lower order stereotypies, and higher order stereotypies are like fixed routines, rituals. All those things are called higher order stereotypies. Now, the reason can be different in different children. Some children basically tend to have a avoidance behavior. Basically, by using this stereotypies, they try to avoid focus or attention. So, in terms of situations where there is a stress or the child is put on spot, they would start doing this as a means of distraction, so that they are not complying to the demands which are put on them. The other reason which is proposed is it basically increases the dopamine level in the brain, which gives them motivation to do these things repeatedly as a sensory sort of stimulation to their own. So some people will bob their head, or some even bang their head, or some will just fidget, or some will spin. So these all sensory things give a sort of stimulation and satisfying behavior. So that gets into a vicious cycle, and then it becomes difficult to break it.
Okay. So basically, there are different hypotheses, and there is no concrete hypothesis to explain.
Yeah.
How it can be related to sensory issues, can be because of neurochemicals, or can be because of some other things.
Exactly.
Satisfying, movements.
Yes.
So now we come to the, now we have diagnosed, we have assessed the children. Now we have come to the, for the treatment, what should be done for the management, basically not treatment, what should be done for the management. So after assessing and after confirming that this child needs some kind of therapy. So Gupta sir, can you please explain just in 3-4 lines that what kind of therapy is required? And basically we call the child for the therapy for 1 to 2 hours daily. So whether this kind of therapy, whatever therapy we are giving, whether developmental therapy or occupational therapy, or mixing or combination of different permutation combination, whether this is sufficient for a child with mild, moderate, or severe. What?
Okay. This is very good question, and that is something we all need to understand. In my practice, I always sort of, once we have made the diagnosis, I go through it in much detail with the family to explain it all. Basically, autism is a lifetime diagnosis, and to give you an example, like your hypertension and diabetes, it is a life almost like it stays with you, and the treatment is basically lifestyle changes. So similarly, in autism, it is basically a diagnosis for the family, not just for the child. It is very important to understand. First of all, the parents need to accept it, and then go towards a period of training themselves and other family members who are around the child in the family. Now, the therapy is basically a mix of occupational therapy, speech therapy, play therapy, behavior therapy, all sorts of therapy, which needs to be done in a more integrated and combined approach to get the maximum benefit. And as you said, like it's generally 1 or 2 hour session daily. No, the things don't stop there. The main point here to highlight is the parents and the family needs to be on board with the diagnosis. So the maximum time family is there with the child. The therapist is there just for an hour. So that is too less. So if the family is on board and they are doing the right things to help the child, that itself is a big therapy for the child. and that's why it's very important that you involve the family in the therapy of the child. So the way of doing that is what we call a home program, or involving the family, teaching them what to do so that they can complement the therapy at home, and also to make changes at home so that it helps the child overall. So reduce the stress level, anxiety level, more autism friendly home, and stop comparing with the elder siblings. Acceptance by the parents that okay, my child is different, I need to work on it. So these all are factors which generally gets overlooked, and it significantly hampers the management of autism. So there are many children who will go for therapy, but they are not improving, and the parents are complaining. But when you look at it, they think that just 1 hour of therapy, that's it, my child will improve, nothing else needs to be done. That's a very wrong concept. It's a change for whole of the family, and a lifestyle change, incorporating the child and helping him at home along with the actual therapy work.
Okay, sir. So the message here is that from your side is that not the family alone or neither the therapist alone can do good. Both has
Yeah.
to go parallelly, and family has to accept, and every family member should be contributing for the management of the child. So
Yes.
family will benefit because only 1 to 2 hour therapy per day is not going to help the child. The parental involvement is a must.
And the parents need to take care of themselves as well. That's also important. They need to have proper sleep, proper rest. Otherwise, there are many instances of marital disharmony and discord because of the added stresses and tensions. So it's very important that all these other factors are also taken into consideration.
So, Ojala, this is very naive question, or you can say vague question, and which usually this is a common question in autistic meetings, in meetings or webinar like this. What are the dietary changes required in autism? Even the parents ask.
Yeah, I think it comes mainly from internet. The thing is this, there's lots of things, in internet about, say, dairy restriction or a restriction of gluten in autism, and different people have tried different things. But the thing is, most of these studies came from the West, and in West, you have lots of allergy, cow milk allergy. You have lots of celiacs, while Indian doesn't have it. So the chances that your dietary habit is going to make a huge difference in autism is quite less. And second thing is, if you are, say, example, if you're going dairy free, you really need to go dairy free. Okay, the child can't even eat biscuits because that will contain milk protein and other things. So it's very difficult to do it. And people try different things like camel milk, other thing. So in my practice, I ask them not to restrict anything. The second thing is, look at your child. A autistic child eating something is a boon. Okay, so if a child is eating something, go with it, don't restrict anything. The thing which I ask them to restrict is refined sugar. The reason for it is that with the refined sugar, there is a sugar rush, and they become very hyperactive with sugar. The other thing, I don't restrict. I just ask them to eat whatever they want. There is another theory which has come up recently, and people have started asking about it's about this gut microbiota, and there are few research which is showing that there is some increased leaking of the gut, and what you really need to do is replace the microbiota. So in if I have a child who has problem with, say, many kids with autism, they have problem with diarrhea, so they have regular loose stool or very severe constipation. In those patients, I try changing the microbiota. Otherwise, I ask them just to continue with whatever they are taking.
Okay, sir. So basically, this is basically what we can say is a myth, and there are no special diets for autistic children, and you can give regular diet, and whatever the complaints are, you can act accordingly, or you can give medicines accordingly if required. and giving vitamin D and other things, which is related with all other diseases, is not going to harm, but it is whether they are going to give benefit in autistic children, that is not confirmed, or is still not researched. Sir, what about the DHA?
Yes, I usually prescribe DHA to the kids because first thing is it's not harmful. It's just a supplement. Okay, and there are evidence that the kids with DHA do better, so their behavior does change. There are studies. So yes, DHA I definitely prescribe.
What about
I ask parents whether they want the supplement or not.
Sir, Gupta sir, do you prescribe DHA?
Pardon, sir?
Well, not I do prescribe, but not specifically for autism as such. I generally prescribe it as a nutritional supplement if I think that child's overall nutrition is poor. Then probably he might be deficient in DHA, EHA as well, but not as a routine. I would say.
Okay, sir. Okay. So now our child has grown up. Now he has become an adolescent, and now he is still having some features of autism. Now, what are the different problems usually this young children face? Because we always talk about early intervention, early catch,
Exactly.
but we don't talk about the adolescents who are still having some kind of features, or maybe they are not being seen by the general population, but can be picked up by doctor that this was a case of autism, and there are some features are still left. So what
Yeah.
are the issues, Gupta sir?
So here there are two things to consider. Firstly, whether this is a high functioning autism, in which case probably this child might not have any problems during his early years, and this would be the first time the child would be presenting with problems, or the family would saying there is something abnormal with this child, we want him to be assessed. The other scenario will be low functioning autism, where child is already diagnosed with autism in his younger days, and now he has grown up to a adolescent age. So I'll come to the first group first, high functioning autism. Now here the diagnosis can be tricky. Basically, if you go on taking the history, probably you will not find much in the early in terms of language delay or any other problems, and it might be just in history of like maybe 1 or 2 years before the presentation. The main difficulties in adolescent age group is basically there is a development of self-image and self-identity. The child himself starts recognizing that he is different from other child, and he is not able to understand why he is different, and also why he is not able to maintain friendship in his peer group, why he is always sort of at the corner, why doesn't he enjoy things which other children do. So they become introvert. Basically, they don't communicate their feelings or emotions to anybody else, and they try to hide it out. So especially in girls rather than boys, girls are more difficult to diagnose than boys anyway, because they have more sort of social emotional circuitry and give them a protective advantage. But in adolescent also there is a play of hormones, because that is also a pubertal age. So you have a rush of hormones, and your body biochemistry is anyway all over the place. Even in normal teenagers, you would see there is rebellious behavior or not listening to the parents, and they have their mind of their own. So most of the times the parents would think, okay, it's just because of his teenage years that he is behaving in this way. But there are clear-cut signs which one should be aware of. Firstly, the child who eye contact is one of the consistent signs. These children generally wouldn't give you a proper eye contact, and they will tend to look away from you whenever they are speaking. So that is something which is definitely there. Secondly, they will be very miser in expressing their emotions or their worries or any. So if you ask them, okay, what happened to your school today, or what happened with your friend, you're not speaking with him anymore, they will just say, oh, don't bother, I'm not interested in talking about that, and they will not reveal anything. So those are the clues which should alert you that what is going on. Thirdly, their perception of the gestures and the social cues might be incorrect. So what I'm trying to say is they might incorrectly interpret the intentions of the other person they are socializing with. So suppose if somebody is making some facial gesture or making a sarcasm or a joke, they would find it very difficult to understand actually what the other person is saying, and they would think that the other person is probably making fun of them or want to demean them, and that might hamper the relationship. So these are very common things you see in the adolescent population. Coming on to the second group, where the child has already been diagnosed in the younger age and now he has grown up. Now, these children basically already have a diagnosis, so their problems are a bit separate. So, problems mainly relate to their intellectual abilities. So, they have difficulties in their education, they will need additional learning support. There is problems with behavior, they are very difficult to manage, and already they have been through a lot because in terms of intervention, in terms of medications, in terms of counseling. So they are actually not very compliant anymore to undertake all of this again. And generally, the core features sometimes might disappear, but in terms of like stereotypies and all those things might over the time sort of settle down. But these other features in terms of social social use of language and the social interaction still is a major thing which persists. So we have to sort of deal with it accordingly. So there are standardized tests to diagnose autism in the adolescent high functioning autism group, uh, which needs to be performed in order to have a definitive diagnosis. And then with the main thing I think to diagnose autism is related to their future career and the choice of career. What I think is if they don't make a proper choice of career, it is a big drawback for them, especially if they have got autism and they go into a career where more of social skills are required. They are at a big disadvantage. So the career counseling is one of the important things which should be done in this age group, along with the support in terms of counseling and psychological intervention.
Okay, sir. So basically, the continuous therapy and counseling, and even the message is here that even you can get a diagnosis of autism at later age. If you find there are subtle signs of autism in an adolescent, then you can definitely refer the child to a developmental pediatrician for further assessment. So, sir, this is again a common question that if the child is already diagnosed or confirmed, now the mother is working, father is also working. So, how we have discussed that we need, parental therapy as well, along with the, therapy from the outside or from the developmental clinic. So, how a working mother, can manage autistic child? Ojla, sir, please.
Yeah, as we already discussed, here most of the autistic kids, they are from high functional nuclear families where parents are educated, so it is quite likely that both the parents are working. So in this situation, I usually tell parents that okay, managing autism is a teamwork. Okay, so part of the team is me, my therapist, and the parents. So both mother and father. So what we really need to do is to look at their situation. That okay, whether they would, they should be, even if the mother is working, they should be able to bring the child to the therapy center. They can still learn what we are doing and do it at home. Sorry, excuse me. The other thing which is quite important is that they need to find the ways that the child is engaged. So even if the child is slightly younger, they can actually put the child in play school. The child can go to a child minder where they can engage with other kids of the similar age. Also, I tell them that what they really need to do is if the child is of slightly older age group, that they should put the child in some sort of a sport. So a hobby class, a sports like swimming, any sports. What happens is when they spend their energy, they usually calm down a bit. So what the mother needs to do is they need to find the ways so that the child is engaged, not to give them just the phone so that the mother can come back and cook food, because that's very very common that they just give them a
So the
phone.
the common question from the parent side is that should the mother leave the job and be at home to help the children, help the child with autistic?
No, that's not how I recommend. I usually tell them that if they really want to do something, they can say take a few months of leave initially, so that they can do some intense therapy initially, and the child mother can spend more time with the kid. But in long term, what the mother needs to do is try to find a way that the child is engaged somewhere. Okay, so just leaving a job, what is going to happen is after a year, we will have a child who has got autism and a mother who is in depression. So we need to look after parents also.
Okay, so mother should not leave his job. She can take leave if required, or other family members can participate and give time. And also, there are some other ways like schools or play schools or maybe somewhere else where the child can be engaged. Okay. So, Gupta sir, again the question from the parents is that what about the education? Will my child be able to go to a normal school?
Yeah. Again, this is a very, very common question and worry for the parents. Now, to answer this question, it will depend on which stage this question is being asked. So, suppose you are seeing a 2-year-old child and you have diagnosed a 2-year-old and the parents ask this question, then I would not sort of go into too much detail at that time. I would just say that we'll have to see how he responds to the intervention and how he improves in the coming couple of years to decide the best course of action. So you can't commit at that point of time whether he would or he would not go to a mainstream school, and actually that is not fair on the child or parents as well. So if the question is asked to you too early, you would just say that we hope that he should be able to go, provided he gets the right intervention and shows the improvement which we are hoping for. But we will decide it near the time. So that's the way to answer the question when it is asked early on. Now, suppose the question comes up when the child is a bit older at 4 or 5 years age group, when he's already in the nursery and now the parents have to get him admitted in a school. At that point, what I generally do is I get a report from the educational institution where the child is already in. So, like a nursery or a play group, and if possible, I directly speak to the teacher who is seeing the child to get a hang and a feel of how the child is in a social setup, formal social setup, teaching setup. So if the situation is that he is able to focus, concentrate, sit, and learn, that is all the basic requirement to get sort of in a place in the normal mainstream school. Uh, but if on the other hand, if you get a feedback that in spite of all the interventions, the child is still not able to sit at a place, he's constantly all over the place, he's disturbing other children, then probably it would not be a nice idea at that point of time, because anyway, if you get admitted, the school will say that they are not able to manage the child, and then it will be a disturbance for everybody. So in that scenario, what I generally advise is to sort of continue in the same educational setup maybe for a bit longer until the child improves more, and then we can maybe try after 6 months, 1 year, once the child is more settled, to place him in a more appropriate school setup. Uh,
So
so
early
that's what I generally do.
Yes, sir. So early intervention is possibly that basically is the key. If you diagnose the child early, possibly after 6 months of therapy or 1 year of therapy, possibly when he
Yeah.
go to the
And most of the time they are able to, like if the diagnosis made early and you have given proper intervention, by the time they are 4 or 5, they are actually most of the time ready to be going into the mainstream school.
severity is high. If it is moderate to severe kind of thing, then probably
Yeah, exactly. So if there are children who come late at 4 or 5 years, then actually they have missed the boat. And the other thing is, if it is so severe that in spite of all the interventions, you are not getting any response. So those are the scenario where actually you need to consult the parents that that might not be a good choice for the child.
Okay, sir. So again, the question continues that will my child be independent in the near future? Will he be able to take care of himself? Both of these questions, sir. Ojla sir.
It's very difficult to answer that how the child will be in few years time. So what I usually tell parents is that what we have to do is, this is a long, the child will require a long-term intervention, and what we have to do is we have to take one step at a time. So I usually tell them that, okay, at the moment, just start the therapy, do the best you can do, and see how the child is responding. So if a child starts responding, if the child starts going to a mainstream school, the child will be independent in the future. The other thing is whether this child is a high functioning autism or a low functioning autism. If it's a high functioning autism, and if you are intervening early, it's quite likely that the child will be independent and will be able to take care of himself in future. But if it's low functioning, then usually what happens is these kids will need some sort of help in the future, whatever we try. The other thing is that when we say evaluate them earlier, what is their level of autism? It's a very severe autism. The response to the therapy is not that great. All right, but the most important thing is that you have given a therapy for a longer time, and how the child is after the therapy, that will give us an indication. So I usually don't tell them that we haven't seen the future. So what I tell them is that कि हमारे हाथ पे मेहनत करना है, अपन मेहनत करते हैं, और जो फ्यूचर जो आगे आएगा उसको जैसे जैसे समय आता जाएगा वो अपने को समझ में आता जाएगा.
Okay sir. So basically ज़्यादा आगे की सोचना नहीं है. We have to think जो अभी चल रहा है, whatever is happening. So you have to just focus on the therapy, and the time will tell whether he will be independent or whether he will be able to take care of himself. Probably depends on also on the severity of the autism, probably, and at what age we are intervening. Okay, so as Gupta sir was discussing earlier, sir, any positive side?
Yeah. So sorry, I think I have partly discussed this, but I'll go through it in a bit more detail. So there are many famous personalities. If you look at the history, like our famous scientist Newton, Albert Einstein, Michelangelo painter, and in the recent times Steve Jobs, Apple director, Bill Gates, they are all said to be autistic.
Charles Darwin has also been rumored. He was also
Hello?
Charles Darwin.
Yes, Charles Darwin. That's another very good example. Yes, correct. So basically, autism also have a positive side in the sense that it gives you an enhanced ability to focus on a particular aspect in a much more detail, which a normal person would otherwise struggle, because they are not bothered about the environment around them too much, or the social implications of the thing. So they are in a way much more focused on the things they are doing. So many of the, you would see software engineers or this IT people, they are autistic, but they are fabulous at their jobs. They do devise very good software programs and all of that, because they are just working with the machine. There is no human contact, so it works well for them. And the other aspect I was telling was that this also has been linked to the higher intelligence. Like I was explaining, after the advent of genetic technology and use of decoding our exomes, it has come to light that the alleles which are responsible for mutation in case of autism are the same alleles which are also responsible for higher intelligence in the humankind. But we do not fully understand yet what actually goes wrong, so that it lands up into the autism domain in these children. it is all to do with the neuronal connection or synapses, the protein which is encoded by those genes. They are needed for establishing the right type of synaptic connections, and they get deficient, and that's why the circuitry is not made. So, as I was explaining earlier, overall, if we look in the past humankind history, our cognitive abilities are on the rise with the passage of time as a race. And probably it is thought that autism might be one of the factors, like the mutations which are involved in this cognitive abilities increasing. And it is just one of the experiment gone wrong of the nature, which lends up some children into autism. So there are not many examples, as I have mentioned earlier, where people with autism have done great things, and we sort of go to them. So that's on the positive side as well, I would say.
So basically, this is just to tell parents, for parents to encourage them that there are so many eminent personalities which are having features of autism or having confirmed autism. Still, they have chosen a good career or became a good person.
But you need to be careful because you are talking about rarity, Nilesh. This is rarity, all right. You need to be careful. आपने पेरेंट्स को बोल दिया कि भैया ऑटिज्म है, बच्चा बहुत अच्छा करेगा, तो 2 साल बाद वो आपके सामने
Bill Gates बनेगा.
No, this is all about encouragement and motivation, I think, so that they don't lose hopes. And there are children who have actually done well, but it should be in the context. Actually, you should not give false hopes at the same time. That's very correct, Ashish.
We can guide the parents that the child can have some special skills in relation to the music or maybe computer or maybe the reading or something like this. High risk.
Yeah, which suits his personality. That's why I mentioned that career choice is very important. Once you are diagnosed with autism, you need to make a right career choice, so that will help you in the long run. Otherwise, if you make a wrong career choice, probably it might be a detriment.
Yes, same. Okay, sir. So from my side, it is over. I think if there are questions in the chat box, we can definitely answer if there are any.
Anything else?
Yeah, Dr. Madhushi Deshpande has asked, most of schools expel the child with the explanation that the teacher is able to manage, not able to manage probably.
Not able to manage, yes.
Then what is your take on parents to Dr.
Yeah, no, this is again very practical scenario which we encounter. Now, unfortunately, in the Indian scenario, most of the good educational institutions are in private sector. So we do come across this situation as the private sector institutions would not like to take on any extra burden related to managing any child in their classroom. So they take a very cautious approach. Now, to circumvent this, there are some legislations which has been drafted by the government and the state governments which can help the child. So it all depends. If it is like a mild to moderate, then you can put in some extra help with the child in terms of any additional teacher to sit with the child in the classroom who can manage his behavior as well and provide some additional support if the school is willing to permit that to happen. But considering it is a private institution, most of the times actually they are not interested. They just want the child to be out so that the other children in his classroom don't get interrupted.
I think there are shadow teacher also. One shadow
teacher is a good option, and then maybe like some children have comorbidities like hyperactivity or other behavioral issues, in which case the child can be given some time out for 10-15 minutes where he can relax himself and then come back and join the classroom. So different strategies. Maybe the therapist can sort of speak with the teacher and go to the school. So these are all possibilities. In the grown-up children, there is also an alternative education platform for NIOS, open schooling, which can be done for children who are having more difficulties. So
I think that a rule has come that every school should have a special educator or special teacher.
Yes, ideally it should be, but But in the real world, they actually don't have, and they are not interested in having it. So they just want that for making some excuse and getting rid of that child. So perseverance is very important on terms of on behalf of parents with the help of clinicians and other. There are lot many organizations nowadays which help this type of kids to get in contact with them, put some pressure on the school, and ask them to get some alternative support for the child to maintain him in the school. So those are the possible, but it all depends on your local situation. I would say I know very well my local situation, but difficult to comment on other places because every place has their own unique things.
Okay, sir.
Quite a lot of school now, the smaller schools, they are quite interested in having these type of kids in. And I also tell parents that, don't go to the very big school where,
Yes, yes.
as there are 40 kids, go to a smaller school where the
Exactly.
total number of students are quite less, so that, the teacher can focus individually on your kid.
Definitely.
So that's very true. Sometimes this also happens. Parents' expectations are very high, so they will get him admitted in a very top-notch school where the expectations are very high from the students. So obviously the child will not be able to match those expectations. So you need to be very realistic and what your child can do and get him admitted accordingly.
Parents, and then after that they expel the child. School is having very high expectation from the parents, and that is why the child is expelled from the school because he is not matching up with the other children, probably. So, sir, this is the question: 4-year-old kid diagnosed with mild to moderate ASD. How to develop his oromotor skills, how to get him follow simple complex commands and respond, how to make him communicate when he's thirsty or hungry, how to potty train. So I think this is all therapy related questions if you want to summarize in 2-3 lines.
Well, there are different therapies for each of these things. First, let me talk about potty training, because that's a huge issue with these kids. So what we tell parents is that first, make sure that your child does not have constipation, because got a lot of these kids, they have constipation. Then what they have to do is every day religiously, they have to take the kids to the toilet, and they make the kids sit in the toilet, and the parents sit with them, say, reading them stories or something. The other option is that what they have to do is they can put a nice picture in their bathroom, that when you enter, what you do, you sit in there, how, and then what you do. So the kids, what happens is many times they take the clues from looking at the pictures, and then they train. So it's very difficult, but eventually most of these kids will get trained. The oromotor skill, in my practice, what we really need to do is it's a team approach. So what we do is, my ABA therapist does oral placement therapy, which is a type of therapy where they teach them how to speak and what to do. The other thing is, my speech therapist will also tell them that because many of these kids, they have problem with the sensory, so they have problem with the food. So as soon as the food enters their oral cavity, they don't like the sensation of it. So what you have to do is, you need to slowly change the texture of the food, so whatever you are eating. So the other thing, usually the therapist get involved in, lots of sensory input is given, and that helps these kids to settle. Avan sir.
Hello.
Yeah, you want to add something?
Sir, I was just reading the questions actually. Okay, so basically, all depends upon what is the developmental age and what is the next step you want to go ahead. I think 1.5 year will go to 2 years, and 2 years will go to 2.5 years of kind of therapy, developmental, therapy. And depending upon the age, you are going to get the, different kind of, develop this milestones. So at 1.5 year, definitely even the normal child, it will be difficult to potty train. At 2 years, it will be okay. So if your autistic child is 1.5 year, even his chronological is 3 years and mental age is around 1.5 to 2 years, then you'll start the training. Eye contact and joint attention is a must for whatever kind of training you are going to give. Now, this is. Sir, my child is 4.5-year-old, have many of improvement in many of the areas, but he is still having a lot of behavioral issues. He is poor in two-way communication too. He is doing wonderful in academics, but still I am worried about his school because of his behavioral issues. So I think you have already discussed about the behavioral issues.
We've already sort of discussed these school issues and behavior issues basically needs to be taken care of in the therapy setting or by a trained psychologist with expertise in managing this. And we have to identify which particular behavior is causing the maximum problem and develop adaptive strategies for that. So it needs to be very tailored. I think it's very difficult to give a overall sort of common intervention for everybody.
Okay, sir. I think the other chat questions are not related with the autism. So it's over from my side. Mom's beliefs say.
Yeah.
So I would like to request our CEO and founder, Mr. Nitin Bindlish, to add a note of thanks to our eminent panelists, the dignified doctors, and to all the doctors and the HCPs who have joined us today in this webinar. Over to you, sir, Mr. Nitin Bindlish.
Okay, thanks, Buddha. Thanks for letting me speak. So first of all, I would like to thank all doctor panelists, Dr. Pawan, Dr. Ashish, Dr. Nilay. Thank you so much for this information. I'm sorry I couldn't join earlier. I'm still recovering from COVID, so couldn't join in time. But it was really informative, and I have a couple of questions. But yes, I'll park it for later, especially on the genetic side, Dr. Pawan, and especially on the neuron side when the neuron fire. How we can ensure that the left and right brain of these kids. So it's a totally different topic, but it was a wonderful session. I was there for 45 minutes. And again, sorry for joining late, but really thankful for all the panelists to take out time and helping our parents and everyone in the team to know more about the ground reality, especially Dr. Ashish in terms of the working mother. We see on daily basis mother struggling because she has her full day job. Then after 7 o'clock, she has to do home chores. And after that, if someone asks her to take care of the child, it's like they play a Superman role, or Superwoman role. So it's difficult, but I would really thank all the panelists to guide us, show us, and tell us the reality what parents go in day in day out. So thank you from Mom's Belief side, the entire team side. To take out time and guiding us and showing what could be the things what we and as well as the parent and Mom's Belief can work with the parent. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I would like to mention here that special thanks to Chhattisgarh Academy of Pediatrics, our president Inder Nathani sir and secretary
Namaste, sir.
Paula sir, and I am the treasurer. So thanks to me too.
Yeah,
and,
thank you, sir.
Thanks to both the panelists and experts who has answered all of the queries in relation to autism. I think we have covered almost all the related topics and related questions in for general pediatrician also and for the parents also. So thanks a lot. And
thanks for inviting me. It was a very nice session. And in future as well, if any more support is needed, I am always there. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, sir. Namaste.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Nathani, you want to speak, please? Nathani sir, are you there?
It's okay. I'm very much impressed about the conduction of the question answer session by you, followed by the time given by the company, and particularly our both of the speakers, Dr. Pawan Gupta and Dr. Ashish Ojla, for their excellent deliberation and answering the questions in a very simple way to understand for the parents. So I am very much thankful to each and every person who has been actively involved for the conduction of this for Raipur IAP and Chhattisgarh IAP. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
sir.
you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so we may leave now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much sir, for your time, sir. Thank you, sir. Have a great evening.
Have a great evening, sir. Have a great evening, sir. Thank you so much.